What would you do if the whole town laughed at the person you loved? 5 years ago, everyone told Daniel he was making the biggest mistake of his life. They whispered behind his back. They laughed when they saw him walking beside Emily. Some even told him, "You can do much better." But Daniel didn't listen. He saw something in Emily that nobody else bothered to see. And 5 years later, when the same people who had rejected her saw what she had become, their faces said everything. Before we begin, if you believe kindness can change a person's life, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Heartline Stories, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this to you. Daniel was 32 when he first met Emily. He worked at a small hardware store in Ohio. He wasn't rich, famous, or powerful. He was just a quiet man who believed that people deserved to be treated with respect. Emily worked at the coffee shop across the street. She was shy and kept mostly to herself. She wore simple clothes, kept her hair tied back, and rarely smiled when customers were around. But Daniel noticed something others didn't. Every morning, before opening the coffee shop, Emily would put a small bag of food beside the back door. Daniel eventually asked her why. Emily smiled softly and said, "It's for an old man who sleeps near the bus station. He comes here sometimes, but he never asks anyone for anything." Daniel looked surprised. "You give him food every morning?" Emily nodded. "He may not have much, but he still deserves breakfast." That answer stayed with Daniel. Over the next few weeks, Daniel started visiting the coffee shop every morning. At first, they talked about simple things. Work. Weather. Movies. Their favorite foods. Then their conversations became longer. Daniel discovered that Emily had spent most of her life being judged because of her appearance. She had gained weight after a serious illness when she was younger, and people had never let her forget it. At school, children had made fun of her. At work, some customers laughed when she walked by. Even people in her own family had told her that nobody would ever want to marry her. Emily had learned to expect rejection. One evening, Daniel finally asked her out. Emily stared at him. "You're serious?" Daniel smiled. "Very serious." She looked down at the table. "You know what people say about me." "I don't care what people say." "You should." "Why?" "Because they're probably right." Daniel reached across the table and gently held her hand. "Emily, I don't want to marry what other people think you should be. I want to marry you." Emily's eyes filled with tears. But not everyone was happy. When Daniel told his friends, one of them laughed. "Man, you're really going to marry her?" Another shook his head. "You're making a mistake." Even Daniel's older brother warned him. "You barely know her. Why rush into something like this?" Daniel simply replied, "Because I've spent enough time watching people judge her without knowing her heart." 6 months later, Daniel and Emily got married in a small church. There were only a few guests. Some relatives didn't come. Some friends made excuses. But Emily walked down the aisle with tears in her eyes, and Daniel couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in her life, Emily felt chosen. Not tolerated. Not pitied. Chosen. The first few years weren't easy. They struggled financially. Daniel worked long hours, while Emily continued working at the coffee shop. But Emily never complained. Instead, she kept helping people. She paid for meals when someone couldn't afford them. She left groceries outside the homes of elderly neighbors. She helped children with homework after work. Whenever someone asked why she kept doing so much for others, Emily always gave the same answer. "Because I know what it feels like to feel invisible." Then something unexpected happened. The coffee shop owner retired and decided to sell the business. Emily had always dreamed of owning a small cafe, but she didn't have enough money. Daniel believed in her. They used their savings and took a small loan. Together, they bought the shop. They named it Emily's Corner. At first, business was slow. But Emily had an idea. Every Friday, she offered free meals to anyone who couldn't afford one. She placed a small sign near the entrance. "No one eats alone here." People started talking. Soon, Emily's corner became more than a cafe. It became a place where homeless people could sit without being judged. Veterans could get a warm meal. Single mothers could bring their children without worrying about the bill. And elderly people could sit for hours and simply talk. 5 years passed. Then one Saturday afternoon, the town held a charity event. Hundreds of people gathered in the community center. Daniel and Emily walked in together. The room became strangely quiet. Many of the same people who had once laughed at Emily were standing there. But this time, they weren't laughing. Emily had become one of the most respected people in town. Her cafe had helped thousands of people. Local newspapers had written about her kindness. A charity organization had even given her an award for helping struggling families. The mayor stepped onto the stage. "We are here today to honor a woman who reminded this community what compassion looks like." Emily looked shocked. Then the mayor said her name. Emily Carter. The room erupted in applause. Daniel stood in the crowd with tears in his eyes. But the most emotional moment came afterward. Daniel's old friend Mark approached him. He looked embarrassed. "I owe you an apology." Daniel nodded. Mark looked toward Emily. "I judged her without knowing her. I thought you were making a terrible mistake." Daniel smiled. "And now?" Mark swallowed. "Now I think you were the luckiest man in the room." Daniel looked at Emily across the crowded hall. "She was always amazing," he said. "People just took 5 years to notice." Emily heard him. She walked over and hugged Daniel tightly. Then she whispered, "Thank you for seeing me when nobody else did." Daniel kissed her forehead. "I didn't save you, Emily." She looked at him. "You saved yourself. I just believed in you." Emily smiled through her tears. And that was the truth. Daniel's kindness didn't change Emily into someone worthy of love. She had always been worthy. His kindness simply gave her the courage to believe it. Sometimes, the person everyone rejects is the person who needs one person to say, "I see you." One kind word can rebuild confidence. One act of kindness can change someone's direction. And one person willing to look beyond appearances can remind another human being that they matter. So before you judge someone by their clothes, their body, their past, or the opinions of others, remember Emily. The world had rejected her. But one man chose to see her heart. And 5 years later, the world finally saw what he had seen all along. Never underestimate kindness. You may never know how badly someone needs it. And sometimes, the person you choose to treat with kindness today may become the person who teaches an entire community how to love tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, remember one simple thing. Be the reason someone feels seen. Be the reason someone feels valued. And whenever you have a choice between judging someone and showing kindness, choose kindness. Because kindness doesn't just change people. Sometimes, it changes the whole world around them.